All right, good morning, good evening, good night. Welcome into another edition of the Nifty Q Show. We're interviewing founders, leaders, and builders in the non-fungible token industry. Today, I'm sitting with GaperArt, co-founder of Chiptos, to talk art versus utility, importance of physical products and events, derivative projects, and his upcoming Chiptos X drop. I'm excited, man. We were gonna have some video here for Gaper, but he's sick, and I feel that all the way. The allergies have hit me pretty hard. But Gaper, it's nice to be sitting here with you today, man.
Yeah, hey, how are you guys?
We're excited to have a good conversation, man. Chiptos is a project. Like, I was just doing my background kind of like deep dive this morning, and you guys got a lot of good art that comes along with, maybe some like thoughtful founders as opposed to the next kind of PFP drop that doesn't look at all any good but somehow sells out. So I'm excited to talk to you about like art versus utility and kind of how you do these 3D renderings, man. But how are you doing today and this week? I know you said you went out to LA.
Yeah, I'm just getting back from LA. I'm getting over some cold symptoms, sore throat, a little sickness, infection, but pretty much recovering from that. And yeah, the last week's been pretty good since I got back.
So we were talking a little bit before we pressed live on the differences between NYC and LA as it's related to the events. What were the differences that you saw? Because I didn't get a chance to go out to LA, and I know there's a lot of people that are kind of looking at the next event to hit. But what were the takeaways there from being at both NYC and LA?
I mean, LA, it felt like, I don't know, man, like New York was just, it's New York. Like it feels like busier, it feels more businessy. I mean, Ape Fest, all these like events. I can't quite put my finger on it, but like LA was like leagues below NFT NYC.
Hmm.
And also like in New York, everything was like close by relatively. In LA, man, like oh my God, you gotta go to like all these different places, bro. Like 30-minute Uber minimum everywhere. But I don't know, just New York has a different feel. It was a lot nicer.
Yeah, I could see that. I talked with Gabe about him being upset about the NFT Las Vegas event getting canceled because Vegas is really kind of a mixture of both LA and NYC, where everything's kind of together, but we have enough space where you're not trying to cram 100 people into like a 50-person bar or anything like that. So yeah, man, it's good to hear your thoughts on LA and NYC. I'll definitely be seeing you at NFT NYC as well. But give me a little bit of a background on how you found yourself in the crypto space and the NFT space, man. Like, give me a little bit of that Gaper history.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So this is a really interesting one. I was just coming off of like that COVID year, and I'm like, okay, like I want to start my own business. Um, and I was listening to the Joe Rogan podcast, and he was talking about this app called Clubhouse, and I'm like, oh, like let me check this out. Maybe I can make some connections and see what I can do, right? And so I just started AFKing in a ton of rooms, like listening while I'd be working or doing things. And you know, maybe after a week, I started seeing these rooms like NFTs. Like I saw these rooms like everywhere, and so I just started joining these rooms, and I'm like, yo, like what is this? And I just kept listening in, and then someone like explained it, and like my mind just like exploded. I'm like, holy shit, like this is it, like this is the next thing. And turns out I was right. But as soon as I had that, like, as soon as I understood that, as soon as I understood what an NFT was, and like I felt that realization, like I went all in. I like threw away the business thing. I just went all into NFTs, and I started making my own art. I started experimenting with my own glitch art. And the way I made my glitch art was like overclocking my GPU, uh, and then opening Photoshop, and like Photoshop would struggle to keep up. And so the work I was working on would just start to glitch out like crazy. And then I capture those, and I made art out of that. And I did that for about a month. I had a glitch collection for about a month. And I remember like I got in like February 12th, I think. Like, well, the first screenshot on my phone of an NFT room was like February 12th, 21. And my first NFT sold was March 4th, uh, a
Yeah,
month later.
and listen, like that's how fast the NFT space moves, man. Like you hear about it for the first time, and then if you commit yourself, you can really learn and kind of commit, and things move so quickly that you can kind of get onto these new products. Now, I want to go back to this clubhouse situation. Do you remember what room you were in and who explained NFTs to you to the point where it kind of like hit as a light bulb moment?
Bro, I know Allen Hena like had to be there. Allen Hena was actually my first collector. He was the first person to buy one of my pieces. And if it wasn't him, it was definitely someone in a room with him. I remember, oh man, there's so many names, man. I don't know if you were big into Clubhouse back then too.
Yeah.
There's that one girl who did like VR art. I forgot her name.
So I'm interested in this. Allen Henna, big name in the NFT space. There are a lot of NFT artists that are looking to get people to buy, specifically like maybe influencers to kind of hear about or know about their next drop. How did you get connected to Allen in that way, or was it just kind of a one-off? You just dropped it and he bought it.
I mean, really what it was is like I had made a bunch of art. Well, I had dropped three pieces off the bat, right? And they didn't sell right away. And so I'm like, okay, like I have to let people know about this. And so the format I saw is like people would make art and then they'd go into rooms and talk about their art and in like a non-shilly way. And so that's what I did. I just went into these different rooms. I'm like, hey guys, I just started making my first NFTs and I would tell people about my process and like how I did it, and they thought that was really cool. And people just started picking up pieces, and the more I talked about it, the more people would like take the time to research and potentially buy one. So that was really it. Just like you just have to tell people about it. And the more people you tell about it, the higher your chances of finding collectors.
You're one of the first individuals that I've like talked to or kind of have a podcast interview that wasn't maybe around in crypto in that 2017 timeframe. Do you hear about those stories of like crypto when ICOs were around, or do you kind of like look back at kind of learning up on your blockchain history with as it's related to like Ethereum's founding and all that? Or are you just like, I'm here today, NFTs, and I'm not looking back?
I mean, I definitely am interested in the history, um, as much as it's like relevant to me and like relevant in culture, like of people talking about it. Like, people reference it. I'm like, okay, like I want to know what this is. So I'm like not outside of the loop. But I think outside of like what's culturally relevant, I don't know much about that like 2017 history.
So when you first got into NFTs, what else were you looking into? So you told me about Clubhouse. It obviously like hits. There's a lot of good education and onboarding that's happening there. But where as an individual did you go next with like finding out more about NFTs and getting involved in all these platforms and hosting it on OpenSea or Rarible? What was your next step in onboarding?
Like you mean after I made my own art?
Just in general, take me through the timeline. Like, so Alan basically was, breaking down something, or you found a couple rooms, and then what was the next step for you to get onboarded, in the NFT space?
It's so funny because like I went from like no idea what an NFT was to expert in like a week. I literally would just like listen to people nonstop. I'd watch. There wasn't very many YouTube videos. I'm not sure. Like the documentation was kind of sparse back then. I'm sure I did my research elsewhere, but for the most part, it was just like word of mouth on on Clubhouse, and then like putting the pieces together. It's funny because like I was like so after it that like I'd raise my hand in every single room. And like one time I got called up to one of those like big rooms, there's like those big rooms back then, like 400 or 500 people. And I just raised my hand. I got up there and they were talking about NFTs and someone asked an NFT question and I just started going off and I'm like, yeah, it's like this. And like in like a week, 2 weeks, I became an expert on NFTs somehow. But I think I understood it pretty well. Even just from the get-go, just being around computers my whole life.
What specifically clicked for you with NFTs, man? Like, what was it? What was it that kind of like either Alan was saying or these early Clubhouse days where you were like, this makes perfect sense to me, and how you kind of explain it to people, today?
With like digital collectibles, like but like for the world. It's not like you can have a Pokemon trading card stored on Pokemon.com. Like, you can have all these digital things and items stored on their individual servers. But like if you zoom out, like the NFTs are like on Ethereum at least, like they're for the world. Like they're a world collectible. It's like wherever you go, they're there. And so like the server is the world. And so like that's like the single most like crazy thought to me is like, yeah, it's like it's a global collectible.
So when it comes to creating your own art, you've got glitch art that you were kind of walking me through. I'm not an artist myself; that part of my brain just never clicked. So take me through a little bit about like what you were doing as an artist before you kind of got into founding these projects and then founding Chiptos.
Yeah, I think well, I spent most of my life as a programmer, really. And well, I have like programmer, computer science, finance. I went to school for finance, and then I did programming on the side as a hobby within like the gaming community. Um, and so that's what I was really doing before. But throughout that time, I would do things like be like Photoshop here and there. But really, my first crack at art was the NFT space, was the glitch art. And so I remember it took me like that month from like February 12th to March 4th, whatever. Like there was like a 2 week span in there where I literally just had like Photoshop open on my PC 24/7 for those 2 weeks, just trying to figure something out. So I'm like, yo, I have to think of something, like I have to make something. And yeah,
So what did you
yeah.
create first of all? Like what were a couple of the first pieces?
I mean, the first pieces were so bad. It was like these collages of like Bitcoin and Ethereum, like something super, super cliche. And like I tried making it this, I tried making it this. Like I don't know, it was just some sort of like I don't even know. It was just like this really creative process. It wasn't really good at the start, but then like I had this like program on the side open while I was on Photoshop, and then like I hit like 3D layer, and my computer was going so slow, and then like I just hit I hit the like the photo on Photoshop, and like it just went crazy. I'm like, holy shit, what is this? And then I just kept doing it, and it kept changing, and it kept changing, and it kept changing. And I'm like, yo, like this is it. And and then yeah, I kind of figured out I could make these glitches like that, and I went with that. And so um, now we have the glitch art that I did make.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to the people who are listening here on YouTube as we are live. We're also on podcasting platforms afterwards, guys. Definitely check that out on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, the Nifty Q Show. I've got a question from the chat here, man. It says, "Is wax too centralized for NFT artists?" And I want to kind of form that into a question of, what were you looking at as a artist looking to sell your work? Were you looking just on OpenSea? Were you exposed to Rarible at the time? Like where were you trying to
Mm.
sell your art as an artist, and what are you looking at today when it comes to like different platforms other than Ethereum?
I think it's really important to establish that like I really see myself as like a creative entrepreneur, and so I made the art with the intention to capitalize on the opportunity in front of me. And where that was, it wasn't in Wax, it wasn't in Solana, it wasn't anywhere else but ETH for me. And so I didn't try to create art for art's sake necessarily, which I did, but really I created it with the motivation that like there's this crazy opportunity right now on Ethereum. So let me do this now and not later.
What are you looking at today as it relates to these other chains? Are you? I could definitely see early on Ethereum, still had a lot of the market share. It still does to this day. But are you looking at other chains when it comes to like launching these different projects? Like, are you looking to take Chiptos multi-chain? How are you viewing kind of that interoperability or like the multi-chain debate?
Mhm. Yeah, uh, I think I only have sites on ETH right now, and that's because like ETH does have a majority of the market share, but like within that market share, there's also like a huge market share like grab, uh, even in NFTs right now, and kind of like the perspective we're taking is like things are going to be super niche down. Like you have apes who are like the global market leader, punks like these global projects, but then we have more niche projects like Doodles for the QT crowd, that type of crowd. You have all these other projects that serve different niches, and so I think there's a lot of opportunity there. And so I think really like it's going to be like 2 3 years before we see like real saturation on Ethereum. Um, and so yeah, all the opportunity I think right now for at least what we're doing is going to be on Ethereum.
So Chiptos, and I'm kind of jumping a step here. We Chiptos X is your latest release that you're having later this month. But you had a Punks derivative that came out relatively long ago in NFT standards. But I want to have a conversation about like your thoughts on derivatives, right? Because like sometimes derivatives can take on negative connotation. But what were you thinking of when you created essentially like a product using the IP of maybe not like Larva Labs specifically, but just like taking that CryptoPunk kind of image and using it as your own project? What do you make on derivatives at this point?
Yeah, I think it's like art imitates. Like I even know like a good quote to say here. I think derivatives are cool because like I think all art is derived from some sort of other art. Um, I think the CryptoPunk at the time I made it was like super culturally relevant, and so I don't know. I think it just made sense. It was like this homage to like the single biggest like culturally relevant NFT at the time, and it's always a good way to get your ideas flowing because people recognize that and they're like, oh, I like the spin you did on this, and yeah, I think derivatives are cool.
So take me through the hardware piece of this because there's a little bit that goes into the community piece here where you guys are like hosting nights where you're kind of doing PC building.
Mm.
The obviously the punk that I see next to me or the Chiptopunk that I see next to me here is like has that hardware piece where it looks like a motherboard essentially. So what is the ode to kind of hardware within both the Chiptopunk but also kind of in your project as a whole?
Oh, just in general, like why the hardware theme?
Yeah, just what? Yeah,
Mm. Yeah, I think this is a really good one, man. So like, I'm an immigrant, and my parents we came here when I was like 3 years old, and my parents are always working, and I remember the first computer they bought us, they put in the kitchen, and so with them being at work all the time, all I had was this computer to keep myself occupied, and so I spent like all day on my computer. Like I'd go down these wormholes. I was like 9 or 10, whatever. Like I'd be on freaking like hack forums or something, like I was on all over the internet. I'd be playing games. I remember playing Toontown. Like I don't know, it was just this black box that just took me everywhere and anywhere. And I figured out that like I can create things that other people can use, like via this terminal, right here in my kitchen. And so uh, another aspect of it was like my parents were like, "Yo, don't break this. Like, be careful. This is very expensive." And so I was always like afraid to touch the actual box, like the inside components. I'm like, "Yo, it's a no-no." Up until the point where I built my first PC myself, and I remember I saved up, and I was able to like order PC parts, and I remember it all came in one box. And then I started building my own PC, and like once I got my hands on these things, like these parts, I'm like, oh, it's not that bad. Like, I was kind of like rough with them almost, but like not too rough. And I figured out that like these are just like man-made metal things arranged in like a specific way. There's nothing like, you know, that I
magical.
have to be really, yeah, yeah, like it's real, like these are real things. And that's kind of like where this thing for hardware really started for me for is like, I don't know, it's just computers have been such a big part of my life. And then after like I did a 2 3 year stint in the gaming community, specifically Minecraft, where I held my own server. I wrote plugins, I wrote mods, and so I was like fairly active in that community during that time. But then after that, I kind of slowed down. I kind of just fell out of love with Minecraft for a little bit. And this was around 18, and then I got a job at a computer plant actually, because they're like, "Oh, this kid's into computers. Like, let's give him a job." And at that plant, I worked like 2 years as a engineering assistant. And this is relevant because they had this recycling plant in the back of the building. And that's actually where I went like last year to go get the parts. I hit them up and I'm like, hey, could I come in, buy like a couple pounds worth of some computer parts? And it took like a couple weeks to like get them to like say yes because they were out of they were gonna make like what, $20. They didn't really care. So I just kept annoying them, like, "Hey, can I come in today? Can I come in today? Can I come in today?" And eventually they're like, "Yeah, just come in today." And I remember I had this blue bin that I got from Walmart. I went in, picked out some parts, and put it on the scale. It was like 26 bucks. And the guy who was like selling it to me, he's like, yeah, that'll be 26 bucks. I gave him like 30. And like he just had this like annoyed look on his face. He's like, yeah, just get out of here. He's like, oh, this kid just bought all this garbage. Like, get out of here. And like in the back of my mind the whole time, I'm like, dude, I'm like, he has no idea what this means for me. And that's all like another, part I really love about it.
So why was that specific? Why were those specific parts like so meaningful to you? Couldn't you have just found them at like some other dump?
Yeah, yeah, but like I don't know, it's like from this place I worked at for 2 years. Like I knew these guys. Yeah, I don't know. It was like kind of
Yeah.
full circle for me.
Gotcha. So like obviously, touching on a little bit about your project, there is that like hardware and PC building kind of theme within, some of the things on the website. Is that kind of intentional? Like are you doing is the community going to be made up of like individuals that like PC building, for example, or like to talk about hardware and building computers?
Yeah, absolutely. Like I think that's really like where our superpower is being in like a super specific community. Like we realize we're not for everybody, and that's okay. We're really trying to build a community for hardware enthusiasts and gamers and really people like myself who have just kind of been brought up and raised with the computer in their life the whole time.
That's dope. So we're kind of right at the like foundational layer where we can kind of talk about you founding both pretty much everything, right? So Chiptopunks, I know Chiptos 512 is one, as well as Chiptos X now. So kind of take us through the project as it stands, I guess today, but also through that origin story.
Yeah, absolutely. So after the glitch art, I pivoted and I was like, okay, I need to make like something even cooler than this. Like, I don't know, like the first thing that came to mind was the Chiptopunk. And I'm like, yo, I'm not gonna think about it. I'm just gonna do it. I'm just gonna build it. And so I built it and it launched May 13th and it took about a month to sell. And in that month, we'd go on like marketing campaigns, like we do rooms and we just talk about it and I'd be in Clubhouse just talking about it, telling people about it, making friends. Um,
What was your pitch?
and kind of like what I told you, like my backstory of the whole hardware aspect. And it wasn't really as pitchy back then. It was more like, hey, like I do this. It was really more like me just talking about the art and then hoping a collector would be like, hey, this is cool. I want to collect this. And then also the collector would get the physical piece too. So that was like another benefit or probably something that hurt me. 'Cause not everyone wants this like physical piece. But yeah, after that, it took like a month to sell. And in that process of trying to sell it and market it, I met Cam, and Cam was like Cam Taylor, and he was like, "Wow, this is a great concept. I know how we can take this to the next level." And he mocks up the first Chiptos 512, and I'm like, "Dude, this is amazing. Let's keep working on this." And so over the course of like 3 months, we iterated on it like several times, and over that time, we kind of like figured out what we wanted to look like, the different traits, the different colors, how we wanted the animation, and so like like in three, it took us like 3 months to render all of them. Like it took a
Mm-hmm.
long ass time, um, because each one took like 40 minutes to render, and so we did 512, and then August 20th, boom, it was ready, and we launched on August 20th. 2 weeks prior to that, we posted a teaser on Twitter. Teaser blows up. Um, Overnight, we get like 5, 10,000 people on our Discord. I'm like, okay, this is a lot. And the sellout come or not the sellout, like the sale date comes, and it sells out in 6 seconds. I'm like, okay, wow, this is insane. And then the secondary starts flying. I'm like, wow, this is insane.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and we had no roadmap. We had literally nothing. It was just the art. It was literally just an art project of 512 people. And even to this day, like that's like a big core value of ours is like the art comes first. I think even to the holders that we have today, I asked them like, hey, what did you like about Chiptos? What made you want to buy one? They're like, honestly, like when I look at this, it reminds me of like my life with computers and like my past and my history about them, and it just I don't know, it makes me feel like happy. uh, in that regard to their life. Um, and that's really what we were going for. It's kind of like the same feeling I get when I look at a Chiptopunk and I'm like, you didn't buy it for any utility, like all this stuff. They're like, no, like I really just bought it for the art. And I think that's amazing because that's really what we wanted to create in the first place.
Do you think projects focus too much on utility, or is there just a difference between some projects and others as it's related to utility and the need to do some of that?
Mm. Yeah, like I feel like the rhetoric is being pushed heavy, saying we need utility, we need this, we need staking, we need this. But really, like over time, it was just a bunch of innovations that were pushed as marketing tools, and now they're kind of just accepted as like, oh, now we need this, because
Mm,
again, like the gatekeepers are like, oh, like, where's your staking? Where's your this? Where's your utility? But like, really, these are like all incremental changes that came about over time that were just really used for marketing, in my opinion. But with that being said, I do think like you need utility to like form that community bond. You need utility to create a brand, right? You can't just have an art project um, be an art project. Like we've seen how that plays out. Like Cryptodes kind of did that. Like it's just purely art project. And the founders are, from what I know at least, I don't know the depth of that. So please correct me if I'm wrong. Any Cryptodes backsies. But like I don't know how involved the devs are. Right? It's really just like this art project. But like really, what we see at Chiptos is like yes, like the art comes first, and then we have all this utility, and we give the tools to the community to form to do things to form the community, as well as like building out the brand, building out like further utility and access that these NFTs can give you. um, but yeah, in terms of like I don't know, there's like a fine line. Like you need utility, but like I feel like the utility being marketed now is like way like almost delusional.
yeah, and it is sometimes it's put on the roadmap as a piece of utility, but it's not going to be done in for like a year and a half or anything like that. So I think you're right in that it's being marketed more than it's being actually implemented.
Yeah.
That's a good point. So let's talk. So you had Chiptos 512, and now you have this upcoming drop, Chiptos X. Tell me what that's about. Like, how is that an addition into the universe that you already got? How is that unique as a separate launch from everything you've done previous to this?
Yeah, I think. Give me 1 second, actually. Um, I'm gonna. Yeah, sorry about that. So, basically, like what we learned from the 512 is like people love art, right? People like the art. But we also learned like it's really hard to grow a brand in a serious community with like 512 pieces, like really 300 holders. And so what Chiptos X is meant to be is it's supposed to be our bigger collection, 7680, and it's really our mission to expand the community and build the brand as a whole. And so what we want to do is first like make the art crazy badass, but we also didn't want it to be a derivative per se, which I don't think the 512 are a derivative. I think they're a work of art on their own. But something inspired from something else. We wanted it to be completely unique, and so we spent a long time in the art creating something that would really be a cohesive collection that's completely unique, while also being high quality and like touching upon what's culturally relevant in the space. And by that last part, I mean like, have you seen some of the art? Like in the art, we have like the ape, the
Mm-hmm.
Kong, the Zilla, stuff like that.
Yep. Yeah, I can see. I've got it pulled up on my screen here, and you guys have a couple trailers that's like highlighting the different assets there. So I'm interested in where you draw the line as a derivative project, right? Like you mentioned, like you don't even think Chiptos 512 is a derivative essentially, but it does have elements like you said where it kind of like visually almost might have some like punk elements. Where do you draw the line in a project being a derivative and then a project using some ideals from another?
Yeah, it's a really hard one because like art's subjective, but in my opinion, like if you're just putting a filter over the base image, that's a derivative. If you're just, like if you're just doing something like that, where it's like you're using like you download an image of a punk and then like you draw on top of it, or you change some colors around, or you do things like filter, or add maybe some assets to it, um, in the same like medium. I think that's a derivative. But I think when you're using like the form factor of what that thing is, like for example, like what the form factor of a CryptoPunk, and then we translated that to like computer parts in a different medium, um, and kind of just like you can identify the form factor, but you can't identify any piece of the actual CryptoPunk image.
Gotcha. Okay, that makes perfect sense. I'm gonna give a quick shout out to the chat again. Easy and Crypto is in the house saying that is dope. Chiptos is on the Nifty Q show. Big shout out to everyone that's tuning in live and tuning in afterwards on audio. So I want to get this next question is kind of related to uh, how can I say it? I think I might have even lost my train of thought, but kind of give me a bigger deep dive into like Chiptos X. I think the question I was kind of leaning into was the supply piece that you mentioned, where you only had a
Mhm.
certain amount of community members. What was the time frame in between the Chiptos 512 launch and now this Chiptos X launch?
512 was August 20th, and this one's set for April 20th. So is that 6 months or five?
Uh, August to April? I think
Yeah,
that's like 8 months. I think.
no way.
Maybe I don't. My
Yeah,
math
man.
is all wrong. I'm on the live show. I can't do math, but how was it having? I'm interested in that because you kind of like with the 512 release, you set a cap where you couldn't increase the amount of community members that were interested in the project, maybe, but just couldn't get involved. How did you deal with like not having that increased supply? Did that like did you feel that cap on your community where people wanted to get involved but couldn't?
Yeah, like you definitely do feel a cap. It's like the floor price is way higher just because like there's less what's it called? Like there's less supply, right? So like the price is forced upward. And then also it's like there's just less pieces, so people are less willing to join a community with like less pieces. I don't know. It's like, and then
Yeah.
our art is already so niche to begin with. Um, yeah, like could could you repeat that question again? I feel like I didn't answer it properly.
No, just dealing with a low supply cap and like how you're thinking about that with this release, right? Like I think Mutants did this for the Bored Apes. Like they made it more accessible
Hmm.
to a lot more people, and in doing so, they grew their community. I don't know the time frame between when Bored Apes launched. I know the Kennel Club launched in between those two, I believe, but just how you're looking at increasing your community. Were you looking at a specific supply cap when you were looking at Chiptos X? Like what? How are you thinking about like increasing the community without diluting your current holders?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think the current holders right now is like so small that like even if you combine all the NFTs in our ecosystem, it's still less than 10,000. And so comparably, that's still a pretty good range to be in. And we went like less than 10,000, obviously, just because we are a little more niche. But at the same time, I think the art stands for itself, where people of different interests are still going to want to get in and kind of diversify their portfolio with something that's more like techy and more niche, with this type of artwork. Um, yeah.
Yeah, I want to give a quick shout out to I believe Cam is who you mentioned earlier, who is a co-founder on this project with you. The art looks amazing. The 3D piece of it obviously takes a little bit more time, which kind of indicates to me that you guys are obviously putting in more work. But you mentioned the utility piece earlier and how you don't like to have that lead the discussion, but definitely it's part of it. So what are your holders of Chiptos X kind of getting as we kind of go towards this launch later in the month?
Absolutely. So I think like uh, some of the big things are things like gaming tournaments, access to gaming tournaments. And holding Chipto is either going to let you create your own team or host your own gaming tournaments. Not host, but like participate. Um, and this is going to be we'll have prizes for holders, including hardware, ETH, and NFTs. And we'll be doing this with other communities as well. I think build nights are super cool. Like we all just get like super intimate, talk to each other, share knowledge, while someone's building a PC or multiple people are building PCs. Art and design workshops. I think this is really cool, especially for like a 3D artist looking at the art and like thinking, yo, like how did he do that? To Cam. And so Cam will be hosting art and design workshops for holders where he'll be discussing digital art and design focused classes. We'll also be doing Solidity and coding sessions where I will uh, kind of just talk to community like about Solidity, Ethereum, how development works really in this space, and we'll be doing courses like that. And so that also depend on like what the community wants, and then early access to our products in terms of like super customized hardware products like keyboards, mice, cases, and then early access to beta testing those as well for specific for some holders.
Tell me a little bit about the details for Chiptos X. So we're kind of coming up to the end of the month here, and that's when you guys are planning this release. Kind of give the details for anyone that's interested.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone is interested, April 26th is the pre-sale at 3 p.m. April 27th, 3 p.m., 24 hours later, will be the public sale later this month. So if you are interested, keep an eye out.
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that your 512 is like sold out in kind of a hubbub. August of 2021 is definitely like you guys launched at the right time. It was kind of like
Yeah,
in a
yeah,
hype cycle, in that kind of hurricane that was the rise of NFTs. Are you looking at the sale a little bit differently now that you're in a different cycle?
yeah. It's a really good question. Like we've had to like develop a marketing strategy from the ground up, right? Like obviously it helps that we have track record, that we have a proven project, we have a community already. But again, like when you're selling out 7,000 pieces, like you need serious marketing effort. And so it's been like a completely different game almost with this project. Like the times are different, people want different things. Um, Bear bull market, whatever people are saying at the time, whatever the sentiment is. Um, and then kind of just like letting enough people know and then growing the community in like a way bigger way. So yeah, it's definitely been like a complete like 360, 180, whatever, of how we market and go about building this community before launch.
Yeah, I want to unpack that statement you just made on like what people want in different environments. Like what do you notice that individuals, maybe traders or investors, want in a hurricane moment of euphoria, and then now, which is there's still massive interest. Don't get me wrong, the NFT market's growing every day, but what do you notice in the different potential buyers in August 2021 and now?
Yeah, I think in August 2021, like I feel like a lot of people weren't burned yet, but I feel like over time more and more people get burned by like rug pulls, projects going to zero, stuff like that. So it was a very much more naive market back then,
Mm.
right? And by naive, I mean people really didn't understand the risk of these things going to zero or not doing well. It was just literally like everything was doing well. Like even like, and no offense, like the shittiest, like most rug pull looking projects were like mooning because like it was just a frenzy. And so I feel like that went on for quite some time where people got comfortable thinking like, oh, it's gonna happen to this one, it's gonna happen to this one. And like then people started getting burned like over time, like it stopped happening. And now like I feel like a majority of the people who got in back then are more wise and like careful,
Mm.
and that type of mentality carries onward, or it like trickles down to the newcomers because they're like preaching like, oh, like if they're like there's red flags, right? There's like they're preaching like, oh, these are the red flags, these are this. And so now like there's general convention and wisdom that's trickling down into the space that are like kind of rooted from things like this happening. And so yeah, if that makes sense.
No, that makes perfect sense. I mean, everybody kind of needs to have that one or two project piece where they're getting kind of rugged or hurt at least to kind of learn some lessons long term. So I want to give a quick shout out to Kansas here saying RIP Gen Art Scene and Easy and Crypto saying fax marketing is key. I do, and then Dickensis is again saying here for the high effort derivative alpha. I'm interested in what your thoughts are on the market today. Maybe not necessarily within derivatives, but just alpha in general, and where you think the market is, what projects you're getting invested in, or kind of looking at as we sit here today in April.
Oh man, it's a tough one. I think like definitely the meta's been changing to like alpha groups. Everyone's starting an alpha group, bro. Like, everybody. I got into two pretty early on. Like, shout out to Metaverse HQ. I got into that in like May, like one of the OG alpha groups. I'm also part of Origins. But I think currently like that's kind of the market meta is they join an alpha group and now these people are basically acting as gatekeepers to other projects. So, like if a project wants to do well, like you have to get involved with alpha groups. You have to go and market yourselves to them, and then um, they'll like put their people on, and then people copy calls, and they'll be like, "Oh, this project's hot. This project's hot." And it's kind of the what I really see going on in the current NFT market.
Yeah, in 2021, it felt like that was happening with like individual influencers, right? There was like copy trading of the biggest wallets in the space, but now you're saying that's kind of moved from influencers and large personalities to alpha groups of many individuals together.
Yeah, absolutely,
Hmm. All right. Well, tell me
absolutely.
anything else you wanna hit on as it's related to Chiptos X and the project in general, man. I'll open it up to some community questions and we can have like an open discussion to end the episode.
Bro, did you know I was interviewed on LADZ City Discord like last year in April?
No way.
Yeah, bro.
Was that easy?
I have no idea who it was. Some guy from the UK who's big into the cyberpunk community connected me. He was one of my collectors. I forgot
Lander,
his name though. It might have been Lander.
definitely Lander.
But he connected me, bro. Like if I go on the Discord, I got like five lads token right now, on my account.
He's a holder. Let's go.
Like that was cool. That was cool. There's a ton of people. Bro, I remember you guys did music right before, right? There was like a little radio show before, and then you did the interview.
You might have been with Crypto Buffalo. Does that ring a bell?
Bro, yes. Yes,
There
I
it
think that was
is.
him.
Fun times, man. Fun times. Like
A
looking back
long
on
time
those times.
ago.
Yeah, yeah, it was. So I want to give a quick our vibe, our tribe out there as Gaper here is a holder of LADS tokens. So shout out to you, my man. Yeah,
Yes, sir.
give me some other thoughts on like where the space is today. Like get more alpha. I know we're not in an alpha group here on the Nifty Q show, but we're interviewing people that can definitely give some insights on where the space is in 2022, man. Like where do you think we're headed here in the next 6 months?
Where I think we're headed. I'm interested in seeing where this Yuga thing goes, like ApeCoin and
Mm.
the other side, like land drop. I think that's going to be exciting. I think it might also suck up a lot of liquidity. Um, I don't know. I think it's only going to get harder for more like new projects to come in. I think we see VC money a lot sooner than people think. I think we see they just yeah, like real big bucks coming into the space and buying things up really soon, or at least starting their own projects, trying to get market share. So yeah, I think as time goes on, definitely just more saturation, uh, difficulty, barriers to entry, like all that is going to become a really real thing.
So essentially, what you're saying is like people are competing against other individuals, maybe some high net worth individuals right now for NFT assets, but you're saying the market might get hard for the individual when VCs are starting to compete with a larger bag of cash. Is that what you're getting at?
Not for the trader. I was like coming from the perspective of like a creator or like a founder,
Hmm.
but for the trading aspect, like I mean, shit, it's all momentum, man. Like it's all like it really is like who has the alpha. Like I don't know, trading's such a tough one, man. It, it's almost impossible to do by yourself.
Mm-hmm. Why?
That's why joining like I don't just like there's so much information. There's no way you can just parse all of it. But like if if you're in a group and like two or three guys are like, yeah, like I did the research, like this is good, and like they're trustworthy guys, like, all right,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I'll do it, and then like everybody gets on in it, and maybe it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, but
That was my next question was
yeah,
is some of that manipulation with saying okay I've got X amount in this alpha group here, we'll start to buy up and it'll be a momentum that we create in a self-fulfilling prophecy like you're mentioning.
I think supplies are so low that it's like it's so possible and so easy to almost do that. Like if I wanted to go sweep a floor and then like I get two other guys to do that, and then like we create this narrative that this is like the next big thing, and then we dump our bags on the market. Like, yeah, like that sort of thing like happens all the time, I think.
Mm,
Like, yeah, but hey, you just gotta be careful.
yeah.
Um, it's
That
a ruthless market.
and I we do have people here in the chat that have been a part of the Discord for a long time, and that's the benefit to a lot of these, well intentioned Discord groups. Essentially, not saying that alpha groups aren't. A lot of times they're super well intentioned. Everyone has an aligned incentive to make some damn money, but finding those people to bounce ideas off of or cross check, as you mentioned, can definitely help you in the long term because there's so much information out there. So
Hmm.
yeah. All right, man. Tell me a little like last bit about Chiptos X. I know you kind of like broke down when it's happening, what the mint price is. Anything else you kind of want to get out to the community before we bounce out of here?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been building this for so long, for like a year. Like every day I wake up super excited to grow this thing and build it and just share it with the world. And I think we're as organic as it gets. And yeah, I'm just super excited. And if you value high quality art and effort and want to support someone who's really been in this space for a long time with good intention, I think definitely check out Chiptos. Um, yeah, I think that's it. I think that's it really.
All right, last lightning question I had before we get up out of here, or we get any other community questions, is where does Gaper art come from?
Oh my bro, they asked me this on the other one,
On the other
on
one,
the first
oh
LADZ
yeah,
City one.
yeah, that is a Buffalo question.
Bro, I gave him a different answer last time, but I'll give you a different answer this time.
Oh
I'm gonna give it a
no,
different answer
I
every
no, I
time.
want the right answer. I want like
Nah,
the
they're all
true.
right answers. They're all
Oh,
right
okay,
answers,
okay,
bro.
all right.
You know. Binding of Isaac. Binding of Isaac. There's a mob called Gaper.
Binding of Isaac. What is that?
It's a game,
Okay, so Gape art comes from a game.
pretty much. Gaper. Where do you think it comes from?
The answers I get when I ask that question are just all over the place. I had Rizzle on last week, and he was talking about how guys, like high schoolers at place that he was working at, called him Rizzle, and it just stuck. And I would never know where that came from. So
No, where do you think? Where do you think Gaper? What do you think Gaper means?
again, I have it could be from damn anything. Could be part of your name. Could be part of your name. I have no idea. Where does Nifty Q come from?
Nifty questions.
No, no. Nice try though. Nice try. Look,
Damn.
look. The last question I've got, as it's related to the project, then we'll definitely get up out of here. Is the NFT Worlds piece. So you guys recently talked about how you acquired a piece or an asset there in NFT Worlds. What was your kind of thought process with NFT Worlds and going with that project as opposed to the plethora of other land sales you could have gone into?
Absolutely. I think it's also important to say we also own Sandbox, and our move to pick up NFT Worlds is I think it's really to have that metaverse piece. And I think as opposed to NFT Worlds like Minecraft are is like super 3D, and so like that difference I think is going to be really cool. Like we can make it super simple, but really like we picked it up as a hedge against like it going up in price like crazy. Um, and also like we're still watching what happens with this Yuga thing because like if Yuga comes out with this metaverse and it's like full 3D and like our Chiptos would like fit perfectly in there, like yeah, we might pivot to that. But I think tentatively we're gonna go with the NFT world just because it's hot and it's relatively like a low barrier to entry in terms of setting it up and getting community involved.
I wonder what Yuga's plan will be for the sale because I've heard ApeCoin being tossed around. I've heard mixture of ETH and ApeCoin. What are your thoughts on that?
I mean, if it's ApeCoin, ApeCoin's gonna moon. But
Yeah, I guess
I
no.
don't know. I'd prefer if it was ETH. I think they're gonna do ETH, right? Because like they need money as a business, and like ETH is like readily liquid. But like if they sell like 10,000 ETHs worth of ApeCoin, like that's gonna fuck up the ApeCoin market, you know.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so I think most likely it's gonna be ETH. I think people saying it's gonna be Ape are like just trying to pump this narrative to pump ApeCoin, like you know.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, like it just has to be like just from a business perspective. Like you're this business with VC backing, all these investors. Like you're gonna take ETH because like you don't want to fuck up the ApeCoin market.
Yeah.
And I don't know, it makes sense to me. It doesn't make sense for it to be ApeCoin, not at those numbers.
Yeah, in that situation, you might even get like a big dump after the announcement that maybe it's just an ETH or something in the ApeCoin. So, yeah, I mean, we're all watching. Some of us are probably getting that no inside information had on this podcast or myself or anything for the SEC out there that are, of course, listening to this podcast. But the market definitely seems at times manipulated. Like people are finding this out before the general public does. So stay safe out there. Guys, I had GaperArt here with Chiptos X drop here at the end of the month. We found out late in the episode that Gaper was on LADZ City all those times ago. So I want to give a quick shout out to Crypto Buffalo who interviewed you first, man. This was a great interview. Any last words before we get up out of here?
Nah, man. Shout out LADZ City. Thank you for having us on. And yeah, thank you guys.
Awesome, man. Well, our Vibe, our tribe, we had a holder here on the Nifty Q show today. We have Yatsu from Animoca Brands on tomorrow. That's going to be an amazing interview as well. Hope to see you guys there. This has been the Nifty Q show. Shout out to everybody that showed up live. And Gaper, great combo, man. Hope to see you again.
Likewise, man. Talk soon.